We will explore little-known facts about the Iron Age in Africa, where we confront and challenge the long-standing misconceptions about Africa's role in the development of iron metallurgy. For too long, the contributions of African civilizations to the Iron Age have been overlooked or dismissed. As a further insult to the technological developments of Africa, Western scholars continue to insult the intelligence of Black Africans past and present. A recent study published in the journal PLOS claimed that Benin Bronzes from modern-day Nigeria were created using manillas acquired through trade with the Portuguese in the 15th century. Tobias Skavronek's team reported that the Benin Bronzes were created using the bronze found in manila bracelets, a form of currency from the transatlantic slave trade. The authors reported that the brass used in the Benin Bronzes came from the Rhine region between Germany and Belgium. Although it is plausible that the people of Benin may have switched from local sources of bronze-making technology to readily available sources, such as manila bracelets from Europe, it is worth approaching this with caution. As African scholars, we find the bold proclamation by the study authors, who examined only an insignificant fraction of Benin Bronzes, as being dubious at best. First, the sample size examined in this study was too small to draw swift conclusions about how the people of Benin acquired bronze to produce their intricate art. Furthermore, as we will show in this video, Africans in the continent had advanced metallurgical processes before invasions in antiquity or in more recent times, such as the Arab and transatlantic slave trades. In 1952, Lhote contested the Carthaginian theory by R. Mauney, arguing that Black Africa's iron industry was indeed indigenous. Despite his compelling evidence, mainstream historians ignored these findings for decades. Remarkable discoveries have since emerged to reshape our understanding. In 1959, the Nok civilization in Nigeria was dated to as early as 3500 BC, with further dates extending to 2000 BC, 900 BC, and more recently, 200 AD. Furthermore, iron artifacts from the Termit Massif in Niger dated back to the 10th century BC, and even further back to the 14th or 15th centuries BC. Additionally, findings from the Lake Victoria Nyanza region indicated iron use as early as the 15th century BC. Early datings from Nok and Ndelaine in Senegal, around 2800 BC, suggest that iron metallurgy emerged in Western Africa much earlier than previously thought. These findings compel us to reevaluate and expand our investigations into Africa's early iron technology, revealing a sophisticated and advanced technological heritage. Furthermore, the presence of iron in ancient Egypt, dating back to the Pyramid period, challenges the narrative that Egypt lacked iron resources. It suggests that iron could have been imported from eastern and central Sudan through extensive trade networks when the Sahara was less dry and inhospitable. We have covered how the axial precession of the Earth changes the state of the Sahara every 26,000 years. For those unaware of this fact, the axial precession, also known as the slow wobble of Earth's rotational axis, occurs over 26,000 years. This slow wobble affects long-term climate patterns, including the African monsoon system. When the northern hemisphere tilts more towards the sun during summer, the intensified monsoon brings rainfall to the Sahara, transforming it into a lush, green landscape during green Sahara periods. Conversely, when the tilt reduces solar radiation, the weakened monsoon leads to arid conditions, turning the Sahara back into a desert. Thus, axial precession drives the cyclical climate changes that periodically alter the Sahara's environment. Let's continue the history of metallurgy in Africa. In his article, The Knowledge of Iron in West Africa, published in 1952, before any dating, H. Lhote clearly demonstrated that the iron industry in Black Africa was indigenous and did not come from North Africa via the Sahara, contrary to the assertions of Mauney, whose imaginary viewpoint prevailed without valid reason. These previous false conclusions by Mauney are not surprising when it comes to how Western scholars view the history of blacks in Africa. H. Lhote made some groundbreaking observations. He investigated metalwork in the Sudan. Various pottery-bladed bellows were shown to be original, specifically Sudanese. Furthermore, he found no traces of blast furnaces in the Sahara, even though iron exists there. In contrast, numerous remnants of blast furnaces exist in the Sudanese zone up to the 16th parallel north. He concluded that ethnographic, linguistic, historical, and archaeological facts combine to affirm the distinctly African character of the iron industry in the black world. In contrast, for Armoni, blacks could only be slaves to whom the Berbers entrusted arduous tasks like ironwork. But it must also be that those entrusted with this work did not know it, for they must be not only slaves, but also incapable of independently discovering the methods of iron ore extraction and transformation. However, since the Berbers did not know it either, how did they teach it to their presumed black slaves? When confronted with this question, Armoni resorted to the following explanation. In the second half of the first millennium BC, the Saharan Berbers, uninitiated in iron techniques, raided their metallurgist artisans in North Africa. What a far-fetched theory, utterly unsubstantiated by any evidence. This theory thus revealed itself upon analysis as a mental construct, based on preconceived ideas and not on facts. The ethnographic, linguistic, historical, geographical, and archaeological elements available contradicted the hypothesis of the introduction of the iron industry into Black Africa via North Africa and the Sahara. The blacksmith holds a significant place in traditional African life, both in legends and through the important and diverse functions that the blacksmith performs in the village of Black Africa. The worship of the god, Ogun, the god of iron and war, also suggests the traditional character of this industry in African society. The great black empires, Sahelian or Sudanese, from the oldest, Ouagadougou also known as Ghana, to the most recent, Songhai, extensively penetrated the Sahara with vast portions directly administered by black governors. Who can say that before the Arab invasions, the Berbers were the most numerous and the dominant victors in central and southern Sahara? The black populations living in the Sahara in ancient times were later subdued by Arab Berber Muslims in the oases and mountain ranges. Additionally, the Haratans are not just black slaves brought there by caravans and slave traders, but also represent, predominantly, a residual population of the Neolithic, humid, and black Saharan population. Regarding the age of iron metallurgy in Nigeria, Basil Davidson notes in his book Africa Before the Whites that 4 charcoal fragments from knock layers revealed radiocarbon datings of around 3500, 2000, 900 BC, and 200 AD. Professor Hiano reports that dimple-based pottery was recently discovered in Kasai, in modern-day Congo. It is quite possible that certain ancient cultural remains, deeply buried and not found among analyzable rocks, remain unknown. It is also worth noting that many civilizations buried in the African soil may never see the light of day again. In this context, another factor that cannot be overstated is the rapid oxidation of all iron objects in the hot and humid climates of Africa. Under these conditions, it seems premature to assert what the first centers of iron diffusion in Africa were, and what the diffusion routes across Africa were, especially since the various metallurgical centers already found all seem to date back to a distant antiquity. We can state that, in all probability, iron metallurgy in the African continent is indigenous and was not introduced by external influences. Also, this ancient and traditional industry remained very vibrant until the colonial era. Finally, establishing a chronology of metallurgy for Black Africa is still in its early stages. Indeed, the archaeological discoveries made so far have revealed Nigeria, Mali, Chad, Zambia, and the Great Lakes region as the principal sites of a metallurgy industry. However, this list is not exhaustive, and new evidence may become available in the future. Until the lions have their own historians, the tales of the hunt will always glorify the hunter.